Does your partner want to stop gentle parenting because your children tantrum more than other people's kids do? My name's Jodie Thornton, and I want to talk about what generally happens when we reach this point in a difference of opinion on how we should parent our kids, and why I think there's a much, much easier way for you to get the parenting outcome that you want without it being so hard or taking so long. So what we tend to see, it's very, very common at the moment, that we have one parent who's super committed to gentle parenting. They understand how when their feelings were invalidated when they were a child, it has really affected them throughout their life, and maybe they're still recovering from that. Maybe they're still dealing with the consequences of that. And so they are so committed to being a gentle parent, to breaking cycles and really making things different for their children than it was for them. Very, very common that that parent is partnered with a person who is more feelings averse, right? And this is has long and involved story, but it is that effectively a little bit of that opposites attract. And also these are the couplings where we see more discussion about the differences in parenting style, right? Because they're coming from a different perspective on that. Now, it's very common that in the early days of parenting, so when your child is a baby, right through sometimes even into toddlerhood, that the feelings averse parent is totally fine to go along with the gentle parenting, because gentle parenting of a baby, like, it makes sense, right? It's really just responding to what the baby's communicating that they need, right? So not only does it make quite a lot of sense, but it's not that there's not a lot of conflict culturally about it, and it's not very confronting, generally speaking. Now, when we come to somewhere between 18 months and maybe 2, 3, 4, somewhere along the line, it's very common for the parent who's more feelings averse to start to say things like, we're being too soft. That's why our kid tantrums more than other people's kids. That's why our child doesn't listen as well as other people's children do. Right? And at this point, you will see posts every week on Facebook where people say, who knows of a parenting course that my partner and I can do, because they think that I'm being too soft and that's why our child tantrums, right? And you'll see the same recommendations be trotted out for the big name parenting courses. I don't recommend one of the big name parenting courses in this situation, because the vast majority, when I say the vast majority, every course I have seen, everyone, is focused on on what works and what makes sense for the parent who is more committed to gentle parenting, for the parent who already understands why it's important, and for the parent who's already started to unpack how they were treated in their childhood is impacting them now, and how they don't want to recreate that with their children. I have not seen any parenting courses that are aimed at the parent who's more feelings averse, with the caveat I've seen a few for older children, but the concept is, let's have stronger boundaries, let's make sure children have strict rules, and there's no, like, everybody's on the same page, like they're not actually gentle or responsive, right? I haven't seen many of those, but I've seen a couple, like more in the older children's space. But when we're talking about a course that is aimed at helping parents to achieve a gentle or responsive or progressive parenting outcome, I haven't seen any courses that are constructed in a way that they speak to the experience of both types of parents, and therefore they are not as effective at helping the feelings averse parent to understand why this works and to try it with, like, actual enthusiasm and, like, commitment to giving it a go, and then they don't get the outcomes, right? Then the conversation between the parents often becomes conflict about us not being on the same page. We're still not getting any closer to being back committed to gentle parenting, or getting any closer to your child not having to tantrum so much either, right? We're not focusing on emotional regulation. The parent the more gentle parent, committed parent may have learned some things through that course. If they can get the other parent to come along at all, that parent has either not tried it or tried it, but not with full enthusiasm and full curiosity and what would it take to make this really work, and what would it take to make it sustainable on my part. Right? So that's what I typically see happen. Very big generalizations, but typically that's what I see happen when we get to this point of, I think you're being too soft on our children, and that's why they tantrum more, or that's why they don't listen as much as other people's kids. Now, here's the alternative approach. So you can absolutely work with with somebody so I'm a parent coach. You could work with somebody like me, or a psychologist or social worker, where you're building on the skills that work for your individual family. However, even then, there's something to think about whether it's actually better to do this together, whether it would be better to do it separately, or whether it's better for you to do it on your own. And here's what I take into account when parents approach me to say, should we do this together? Number one is the more feelings averse parent, are they actually open to making a change? Or are they actually thinking, no, we just need to change this. It's not working. We just need to get into a more strict or more authoritarian or old school approach. That's the only way this is going to change. If the other parent is not open to making a change at all, you are better off doing this on your own. You will get a better outcome on your own. And what would that look like? It would look like you helping your child to learn how to regulate. So that starts with you helping them to regulate, and then moves on to helping your child to regulate their own emotions independently, as well as looking at what's underneath of those tantrums. What are the underlying needs that are not being met that cause the big feelings, which then leads to the tantrum? Once we figure out what those underlying needs are, we find ways to get them consistently met, then all of a sudden the tantrums just don't happen. They're prevented before they start. Now, some people would argue that having to teach a child all these skills at such a young age, just because an adult doesn't want to manage their own emotions about the situation, is unfair on the child. And I think not, and here's why. I'm not telling you to teach your child these skills because it is a coping mechanism with a parent that's not ready to validate their emotions. I want you to teach your child these skills because it's better for your child. Your child is capable of learning emotional regulation skills. The older they are, the more they're capable of. But I routinely have clients who are so surprised at how much capacity children have to learn these skills. They just need an invitation and some practice, right? We don't expect them to be perfect. We don't expect them to do it as consistently as we would expect an adult to do it. But if we give them the skills and we give them the space to learn, they can learn. Now, this is what you would do if you had already learned the parenting skills that are important to you. You would be doing it regardless of what your partner was doing or not doing. Now, if you had grown up in a culture where these skills were just the natural way we parent, you would be doing it without even thinking about it, right? It wouldn't even be a question. And that's why I think we want to just get onto that. And the other piece here, it is so much faster to teach a child these skills. So understanding their emotions before they get overwhelmed, articulating their emotions, to talking about why they feel the way they do, and problem solving to find solutions that work for everybody that are realistic. These skills, they are so valuable to your child, and it is so much faster to teach your child these skills than it is to help a feelings averse person to understand why they're pushing their feelings down so much, why that has not been healthy for them, and why it's not okay for your child. It's not the ideal way to raise a child. The very nature of pushing your feelings down and being taught that this is how you should behave around your own feelings means that you're not actually even paying attention to how your upbringing didn't serve you as well as an upbringing where a child's feelings are validated and they're supported to learn how to regulate. Right? The very fact that they've been taught to push their feelings down means that it's harder for them to even recognize that this is an issue. Now, on top of that, if you're a more feelings averse parent, you genuinely believe that pushing your feelings down is the only way to be successful, to be a functioning adult, to being a person who's like a good person, like someone who treats other people well. And whether they can articulate this or not, they genuinely believe that you have to learn to push your feelings down. That's how you cope with feelings. If you allow your feelings to take over logic, you will make decisions that will make your life worse. And that's part of the reason why those courses that are designed to help those of us who are on the more committed to gentle parenting side, they don't actually address those issues, right? They don't address how you genuinely believe that if you validate your child's feelings, they're going to be less effective. They're going to be less successful. They're going to be less happy, right? And that's where a course for those people would need to focus. I'll get there eventually, haven't got there yet. And so that being the case, it is so much faster to teach your child these skills than it is to help your partner come to be on the same page. Now, can this work if only one of you is doing it? Absolutely. We're teaching skills, right? When we say people need to be on the same page, I 100% agree that if you were both on the same page, it would be faster and easier. Absolutely. But when people talk about parenting styles requiring you to be on the same page, what that inherently means is that you're teaching your child that it is no use for you advocating for yourself. It's no use for you being assertive because you're not going to get either of us to budge. Now, if your parenting approach is based on, I want us to understand each other and what's important to each other and find a solution that works for both of us, it does not require you to have the same message. It's like when I work with this, when this parent is at home, we work together to solve problems, right? When this parent is at home, it might be a little trickier, but generally feelings averse parents do quite well with kids when they are able to articulate what the underlying need is. They generally do quite well with that. And so once we've gotten over that harm, it's the same. We're just being considerate of each other, right? Some feelings averse parents will still find it a little bit agitating if a child is particularly confident in being assertive for themselves, but generally speaking, day to day we'll find that even if they're not getting the message from both parents, if they've learned the skills, why would they not be considerate? Why would they not be assertive in a way that's really kind, but like really sticks up for themselves? They would, of course, they would do it with both parents, especially as I say, feelings averse parents generally do quite well when they understand the underlying need. They just don't do as well when it's a feeling that either doesn't appear to make sense or doesn't appear to have a natural path to being resolved, right? So that's the path that I recommend for most people, is to, if your partner is not actually open-minded about making a change, just do it on your own. For some people, your partner is open-minded about making a change, but my next question is, do you both see the problem the same way and the solution the same way? Now, if you were to work with me, I may not follow the same solution that you expect me to. There might be a bit of a different path than you expect. But what it tells me, if you both see the problem the same way and you see the solution the same way, what that tells me is that there's enough commonality in how you want to move forward that likely I'll have the same recommendations for each of you. And in that case, doing it together can work. So whether that might be joint parent coaching sessions where we talk together and then you go off and experiment together and come back and do the next session together. But the third example is that your partner is open-minded about making a change, but they see things very differently to you. So they might be like, totally understand we need to make a change. I do think being more strict is going to be a part of that picture, right? Or I do think that it's your being soft that is the reason the child behaves the way they behave, right? That's a sign that you actually need different paths to get to the same outcome. And so if your partner is enthusiastic about making a change, but they see it differently to you, then what I tend to recommend is we do sessions separately, because we're going to be working on the skills in a different order. And that's in order to make sure that for each of you, we're working on the things that most upset you, the things that most dysregulate you about parenting. We're solving those first, because then the more capacity you have, the easier it is to make changes for the rest of the pieces that need to be resolved. And then secondly, I'm not giving you instructions that will make the situation more dysregulating for you. So for a feelings averse parent, if we do things that make things the feelings more intense, that's going to make it harder for them to stay regulated. So I'm not going to give them those instructions. We would get to the same outcome, the same gentle, responsive parenting outcome over time. It depends on how different the circumstances are and what you're dealing with as to how long it takes. But if we continue working together until you're both comfortable, you will get to the same parenting style, but you'll come at it from a different angle, because of those factors of how well you understand your own emotions, how well you understand how your upbringing has impacted you, and how emotional invalidation really does impact a child, and it stays with them often into adulthood, right? So those would be the 3 paths that I recommend, depending on what your situation is. Now, if you'd like to do this together, if we take that one example of your child is tantruming, then at the moment, 4 sessions with me, which is what it would take for us to get to a place where your child, for most kids, you'll have significantly fewer tantrums. We'll be able to prevent some of the tantrums before they start, because we'll be able to figure out like what is driving those tantrums, and then how do we resolve that day to day, like before the emotions even hit, and then also helping you to help your child regulate. So that work would be done over 4 sessions together. That package is currently at $197. And so if you were to do that together, that's the price for the 2 of you. If you were to do it separately, it's $197 each. And if you were to do it on your own, it's just at $197. So if you have any questions about your situation, or you're not really sure whether this truly applies in your situation, please do reach out. On my website, there's a contact form at jodithornton.com/contact. And there you can just give me like just a brain dump of this is where we're at. This is what I think needs to happen. This is whether I do or don't think my partner should be involved. What do you recommend? I'm more than happy to let you know what I think will get you the best outcome with the least amount of conflict, right? We want to, like, this is part of getting on the same page, is actually resolving the conflict, like actually getting to working together as a team, rather than, trying to influence someone to come over to your side, and often be less successful from that way as well. At the very least, it slows you down. So if you would like to, you're more than happy to reach out. Now, if you'd like to jump in and grab one of those packages, it's jodithornton.com/4, FOUR, for the 4 sessions. And I would love to support you to get through this so that you don't have to keep talking about it, so that your child spends less time dysregulated, and so that, you can really feel much more as a parenting team, and much more close and connected as a family as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.